Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining PTV's post-game coverage of Seton Hall men's basketball as we are here live at the Prudential Center after the aftermath of the Seton Hall men's basketball team defeating the Wagner Seahawks by a score of 75-49. And I'm here joined by Joel Moran as we're here watching the game entirely. But before we get into this game, I want to talk about last game as it was a very monumental win, a key point in the season for the Pirates, 1-3, heading into Penn State on the road for a key non-conference matchup. They were down 19 at that game. How big is that 19-point comeback coming into this game?
It was huge. I mean, it gave them all the momentum in the world. At that game, I mean, coming into this game, they have played 3 games in 5 days. And Penn State, they could have easily folded in that game down 19, but instead they making a resilient comeback against Penn State, which isn't a bad team. And I think Mamu's career-high 30 points was a main contributor of that. Jared Rhoden was phenomenal, and Shavar Reynolds' 3 was, of course, what won them the game. I think it was great defense down the stretch, and coming into this game, they had all the momentum in the world to come and dominate this team in Wagner.
Before that game, things were looking rocky for the Pirates. They were kind of shaky moving in, coming after a loss. But now the momentum is definitely swinging back their way coming into this game against Wagner at home. First game since the Iona win, the only win on the season before they got into here in the Prudential Center. And they showed out with an emphatic win against the Wagner Seahawks. We saw a 22-point performance by Jared Rhoden with 11 rebounds and a career-high 20-point performance with 7 blocks for Ike Obiagu. Does that momentum carry over to this game, and what are some things you saw in this game that you really liked?
The momentum definitely carries over to this game. I mean, going into the Penn State, they were 1-3. They beat Penn State. They're 2-3 now. This game, they need this game to be 500. And when you talk about Jared Rhoden, I mean, this is a guy who is in his junior season. Miles Powell left, so you needed somebody to step up, and so far it's been Jared Rhoden. He's second on the team in points per game behind Mamu, who's getting Player of the Year consideration so far. I know he got ejected today, but throughout the season, we're expecting him to play a huge role for the Pirates. And then I think just Ike Obiagu, he was hitting his free throws. I think the most important thing for the Pirates moving forward is to hit your free throws. They weren't so good against opposing teams in this game. They really fixed that up, and I think that helped them seal this win.
Free throws has definitely been a struggle early on in this season, but we saw players like Jared Rhoden, he went 8 for 10 at the free throw line. Ike Obiagu,
12 for 15.
12 for 15. They were hitting free throws, and that's definitely a key difference in this game. This is the second straight home game for Jared Rhoden with a 20 and 10 double-double. So it looks like Rhoden really likes playing at the Prudential Center. But one player you mentioned, we saw Sandro Mamoukalich really get ejected early in the second half, and he finished with 6 points. How do you think this affects him going forward?
I don't think it affects him much because it was Wagner. If this was a different team that was in the Big East Conference, if it was a conference play team, then I guess it would affect them more. But it was just Wagner. They didn't really need Mamu this game. They still won by a large margin, more than 20 points. So if this was a closer game and Mamu gets ejected, then of course it hurts. But since the team had it all under control, his absence wasn't really felt. But I think he cannot afford to get ejected in games down the line if you're facing better teams. Seton Hall can't afford that.
He cannot afford that. Do you think Kevin Willard talks to him after this and gives him a little pep talk or some consolidation points from a coach to try to not see this happen again moving into Big East play?
I think he'll probably get his head in the right direction, but sometimes in the heat of a basketball game, when players get into scuffles, you can't really hold back those emotions. But he's going to have to do a better job of that moving forward. I think this game was an outlier because usually you don't see this from Mamu.
Now, heading into this game, we saw some not so good play from a couple of players, namely Miles Kao. He finished with 3 points. There's a lot of call for him to step up. He had a good game last game, but now he's reverting back to some inconsistent play. What are your thoughts on Miles Kao not performing as well as he did last game this game?
Any players that don't perform that didn't perform this game, I'm not really putting too much stock into. Miles Kao had 3 points. I know a lot of people want to call him out for it, but I think none of the starters really needed to score this game. You see Shavard, he didn't score much. Kao didn't score much. Amamu finished with 6 points, and they were able to blow out Wagner. I think Miles Kao's bread and butter is playing tough and hard on the defensive end. I think the shot will come. He'll hit those open threes, and just this team, it's really hard to analyze Seton Hall off of this win against this team because this wasn't really a big test for them.
You know, especially coming off a big test in Penn State, as how gritty and tough that game was on the road. But now coming back here, you know, against a Wagner team that the Wagner Seahawks have not beaten the Pirates since 1979, I might add. So very lopsided affair there. But now let's look ahead a little bit. You know, the Big East play is starting this week on Friday. The original schedule would be Pirates playing against the DePaul team here in Big East play, but it got switched around and they're going to start playing the St. John Red Storm. So what are some key things the Pirates want to, you know, hone in on before getting into that Big East play, the coveted tough Big East play?
I think the main thing is to continue being consistent at the free throw line. They can build off this good performance and good free throw percentage today, but now they have to do it against St. John's, who isn't going to be a cakewalk of a matchup. It's going to be a pretty tough matchup. I also feel like Seton Hall has to make it a point of emphasis to go after rebounds, to play tough, to play physical on the interior. When you look at Ike Obiagu, yes, he had 20 points, but he only had 2 rebounds. He's 7'2". He should have more rebounds than 2 rebounds against a team in Wagner that's tallest player in the starting lineup was 6'7". So against St. John's and moving forward, you need players that are as tall as Ike and Mamu to get more rebounds. Jared Rhoden, he's phenomenal on the boards, but he can't be your leading rebounder every single night.
And we've seen multiple teams that the Seton Hall Pirates have faced been smaller than them, as last year they were one of the biggest teams in the country, and this year returning to that same staple as well. But we see still smaller teams out-rebound them or out-battle them, look like they play a little tougher, a little taller. So that's one thing they need to really key in on coming into Big East play. But for that, we will see, and I thank Joel Moran and Rony and Joel here. Keep it locked to PTV for more coverage coming soon. Thank you, everyone, for watching.